I was abducted in the parking lot of where I had a business. My first thought was, I've got to figure out a way to get out of this car. He had the doors taped, so I could not use the handle to get out. He struck me several times, but that pushed me onto the floor, and I was looking right at the car key in the ignition. I turned it off, and I jumped in the back seat and tried to get out the back door, which wasn't taped. And he pushed me a couple times, but I finally got out. And he drove away. He was not found for 9 months. And one day, he murdered a young woman, and he almost got away that time. But there was a combination of things that happened, and he was arrested, charged, and convicted of the murder of that young woman, and then a separate trial, attempted murder, in my case, and kidnapping. You Have the Power was formed in the early 1990s. Our mission was to advocate for victims, as well as victims have information. Victims have knowledge that needs to be shared with others, because sometimes that information can help someone else avoid being a victim.
When you become a victim of crime, your control of your life, you feel powerless. It's a shock. It generally happens in a very quick way.
There always is this feeling of shock and denial. But that's one of our defense mechanisms, to deny something has happened until you can find the strength to face it. And their voice and their experience is very important.
The victims have got to have a place at the table when we are discussing reform.
A bill like this will generate quite a bit of discussion. It will likely generate some heartfelt concerns, perhaps from some victims and victims' rights groups. There are so many times here in the legislature that we take horrible situations and try to pass some law to keep that from ever happening again to another family.
The victim or the victim's family has a right to be heard, because there are two sides to this.
There are some victims who, in their heart and in their lives, will never forgive an inmate. There are other victims who have come to my parole hearing and said, I think it's time to let him go. But there are some victims who will never be ready for that to happen. And there are some crimes for which it should never happen.
I want to see accountability for what's been done. I want to see the victim respected, and I want that perpetrator to show some concern and to make amends with that victim or the victim's family in the case of homicide.
The agenda of working with both the victim and the perpetrator are actually not at opposite poles as it may first appear. If they can understand what their actions did to their family as well as their victims' families, they are less likely to become a repeat offender.
What we're trying to do with these programs is we want people to be accountable. We want them to make amends. One of the ways to do that is to write an apology or accountability letter to the victim that you harmed. I'm not saying they're going to be best friends, but there's an acknowledgement that wrong was done, that person harmed someone else, and that person thought about that and is concerned enough to write this letter of apology.
I don't know that you can really argue against the opportunity for a second look, for the opportunity for hope, the opportunity for redemption, and the opportunity for rehabilitation.
We are not really living in a society that's good for victims and that's good for inmates. With some of these inmates, I can be an advocate. And with some of these inmates, I can't be. But with all of these victims, I can be an advocate.